We're fine.
Just knock.
That should have been provided. You should have your hammer.
Be a
Call the
gavel.
meeting to order. Roll call.
Mayor Mike Hayes,
Present.
Councilmember Watkins, Councilmember Hunt, Councilmember Williams,
Here.
Councilmember Schultz,
Present.
Councilmember Angel
Ramsey.
Yes, I'm
Not
sorry.
surprised. They're right. Present.
Our next item of business is adopting the agenda. This is a special meeting, so the agenda cannot be modified from what was published.
Anybody have any objections? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second. Second by Kip. All in favor?
What's that?
The light's not on.
Coming in hot here. Thank you.
Yeah, there it is.
Thank you.
Mic check.
There are 3 business items on tonight's agenda. We can't vary from those items since this is a special meeting, and we've adopted the agenda for this meeting. First item on the agenda is council budget priorities discussion.
Yes, and sorry, council, I'm toggling between. So the purpose of this meeting this evening for the budget portion is that as we head into the budget season where we're looking at our 2027 expenditures, I wanted to provide council an opportunity to give input with anything that you have seen or heard in the community that you think should be part of our considerations for 2027. So ideas suggested tonight, or if you have individual ideas to send to me in the next few weeks, staff will work on some preliminary estimates of what we're looking at, how that fits within other budget priorities, and we can bring those to council at a future budget meeting. What I'd like to share is that first, it looks like we're probably going to be entering a very tight budget year. So we're going to want to probably keep final expenditures lean. So anything that we shift out probably will want to be very strategic. However, things that are suggested this year don't die just because they don't end up in the next year's budget. And so it's a good opportunity for conversation, ideas, and then go from there in this budget season. And those ideas can be retained for future years as well. So.
Anyone have any ideas, any thoughts, any pet projects they'd like to see, any feedback you've got from the community on various items?
I know the people I've been talking to, they're wanting to see us make headway with the water. Well, yes, the building, but the water situation, stuff like that. And I told them, I was like, at this point, it's a money game. We don't have just $10-15 million just sitting by readily available for us to use in that aspect. So, but they want that done. So that's been the main thing that I've heard is fixing the water deal so that we can try and free up money that this town is having to pay for lost water. So
At this point, it's a financing game, and where do we finance it?
exactly.
And I can add that we had a meeting with our engineer on Thursday. Unfortunately, we weren't able to coordinate with all council schedules. Angel was able to join us for part. And I just remembered I've had an interesting week. So I still owe council members the video from that meeting so that you can all see what was discussed. But we spoke with our engineer about grant funding, loan funding, and different funding stack options. One of the things that they had recommended out of that is that there is a state revolving loan fund that is a low interest loan fund. The deadline to apply is May 1st, and our engineer has sent me the information to apply. I just need to review it and submit the application. If we apply, I'm sorry.
I say at last meeting, did we vote on something like that to go ahead and allow her to do that, or with JEO. I know we kind of voted on something to give them approval to go after any grants, but this isn't considered a grant, right? It's considered more of a loan. Like we have to put up some money towards it for them to
If we
match.
receive it. And so
Okay.
this is a pre-application. I feel like administratively I can apply. I cannot obligate the city to any sort of loan funding. And so I would apply on behalf of the council administratively. I believe, and I'm pulling from memory, but I believe we would find out in June if we were considered eligible for the loan. There is another opportunity to reapply for the grant that we did not receive this time. And the feedback that we've been given is that the primary reason we probably didn't get it is because we were still drawing down the previous one. So we've been encouraged to apply again. If we then get that grant on the next cycle, then we would cancel whatever part of the loan we don't need. And so there are some funding steps that are kind of in motion. So the next step is administratively applying just so we could see if we're eligible for the loan funds.
Absolutely.
And then later in the year, applying again for the grant. We talked at our last meeting about, even as we got some preliminary revenue for water, we could do some just in-house troubleshooting, valve replacement, segmenting the community to try to identify at least where the leaks are occurring.
Yeah.
And so knowing that's a priority, even if we're still trying to finance the bigger picture, we can definitely look at how to go ahead and make some efforts forward on it.
Okay.
So thank you. Great question.
Yeah. I think I emailed you one thing that somebody else had brought up. I'm just not remembering, was the police. Just an average of, I know every year it's set aside
Mhm.
for, hey, here's our budget for that. How much of that in the past, I'd say, 5 years, I think I asked you,
Mhm.
have we actually used? Because my thing is I think on the contract now we have it for 4, and we're not even getting that. We're
This
making
contract is for 2,
okay,
and we're getting 1.
and we're getting 1. So that's my thing is we're setting aside money for 2, but we're not even using half?
No.
I think maybe a little bit more than half for the last few years.
It's run the last 3, even when we were contracted for 4, 2 was pretty much the norm.
Yeah.
Historically, I was looking at it the other day, we've run from 50 to 65% of that money was used for actual.
Mhm.
So
is that something that we could, because once that money is set for that, we can't move it out and move it anywhere, can
it
we?
goes in the general fund.
Mhm.
It's been scattered all over.
Okay,
through-
okay.
Yeah.
And
So
that was going to be my question. I thought, hey, if we're setting aside X amount for police, we can't move it until the end of the year when we find out,
No,
it's not.
No,
So
it's a general fund item, correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
and it's been used over the last few years with the statement, oh, well, we're not gonna spend all the police money this year, along with the money, we've got the money to do X, Y, or Z.
okay.
So
Okay.
we budget for the contract out of a due diligence. And I apologize, I missed the 5-year milestone. I pulled year to date when I pulled.
No, that's fine.
What I've seen is that so far we've spent somewhere in the $2,000 range between utilities and insurance on the police building. And then we have had 4 payments of about $5,400 on the contract for the year. So our total contract to date for the year is $21,604. We budget $145,000 for that fund. So if we were actually spending everything budgeted, instead of $5,400 a month, we'd be at just over $12,000 a month. So Mayor is correct. In the past, that has kind of been spent elsewhere in the budget just because we know we're not going to spend it. It is legal. It's
Okay.
not necessarily like anytime we spend money elsewhere, I want to know what we're not doing. And so in terms of a checks and balances, it's important to track what's tracking as extra from that fund if we are spending elsewhere.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I wasn't trying to advocate that what you guys have been doing wasn't legal. I just didn't know. I thought that, hey, we're setting, $150,000 aside. It has to stay in that
Yeah.
fund.
I don't think
I
anybody
didn't know.
can actually tell you, because there's been so much juggling back and forth between budget budget funds
Okay.
that are in the general budget, to pay, we had to pay the water loss from somewhere, obviously. equipment, whatever it happens to be. And I know that's one thing Sarah's working very hard on, is to get that tightened down to where each budget segment or line item is accountable for that money, and you live within the budget. So
So the general fund, just kind of because not only do you all not know, but that's not common knowledge. And so your general fund is actually your kind of biggest fund. It's your open-ended that funds most municipal services. Almost any other fund we have has either a designated revenue source, like a water utility or sewer or trash, or streets. We have designated funds for all of those. Or we have reserve funds where we take extra money and we start tucking it away for a rainy day or a water leak. So the general fund is where most services are funded out of. It's best practice to try to spend what you've budgeted for each fund. In the end, though, the number that really matters is the number that we published. That's kind of the bottom line number.
So we don't go over that published
For
number.
sure. And if it looks like we're tracking over, for example, a valid reason would be a grant comes in, like a large grant, and we have a chance to spend money that we didn't anticipate in the budget. We can amend the budget so that we legally can spend more.
Okay.
But we legally cannot spend over that kind of bottom
Yes.
line without amending the budget and notifying taxpayers.
Well, and my thing, the reason why is because I know with the 1% tax that just started, that has been allocated for something and it cannot be moved
Water.
for anything else,
Correct.
which is absolutely great.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if this was that same situation.
And
So
you know, we've got a sales tax sunsetting, and we're looking at two items that we would renew that sales tax for: streets and law enforcement, and that needs to be, again, specific.
I just from some of the people I've talked to in town, I've gotten the consensus that people are more worried about our water line issue and our streets, which obviously we're not going to start doing the streets before we do the water lines,
Mhm.
but over a police situation at this point, obviously not everybody's in agreement on that. It
Right.
just seems a lot of the people in town I've talked to, you know, when they see that how much water that, you know, we're actually losing every month,
Mhm.
that our town's losing on water, it's just like, wow.
$150,000 a year that
That's a
could
lot.
conceivably be spent elsewhere. So
Correct.
And
That
that-
could go towards a new
it could, and that's what's in our law. If we can cut the water loss, if we cut it by half in the first round, that's
Exactly.
$75,000 we could put back in on the system.
Correct. So yeah, you would ask,
Mhm.
talk to people. I've gotten that, you know,
Wonderful.
water situations, roads, which roads would obviously have to come number 2 over the
Mhm.
water situation. So that's what I've been hearing.
Anybody have any, I'll call it public amenity ideas that they picked up in the public parks? Functions?
No.
I have none. Mine are the same as Drew's, the water, roads, public safety.
Water, roads, code enforcement. I have talked to some of my neighbors and there's some situations over there that need to be looked at.
Mhm.
You know, when you're driving down the road in a neighborhood and you see inoperable vehicles parked in empty lots and on the grass, parked in yards, that is not acceptable. And I myself don't want to live around that, and neither do any of my neighbors. And probably can feel safe to say that anyone in the city would not want that around their property. It decreases property value, it invites all kinds of rodents and problems, and it's unsightly. So
Anybody else? Do you have any further comments on things you may have heard in passing?
Nothing that I've really heard out and about. At this point, you know, my baseline is to build a budget that I would call business as usual. and then to look at kind of budget packages for what would we look at with some of these. And this is really great feedback. And I think, especially with like roads, there's an opportunity to say, how does that fit in our capital improvement plan? I'll probably bring some items that would go in the capital improvement plan. We have 4 community buildings with roofs that probably need replaced in the next year or two. And so I'm going to try to stretch it out to about 1 a year if I can and find funding for it. So I think a theme I'm seeing shape up here is really take care of what we have. And that's probably the types of items that as I begin scanning and refining the capital improvement plan, the equipment replacement plan, and other things that drive some of the other budget spending that we'll really bring back.
Like that. Take care of it.
Mhm.
I think the upgrade and repair and maintenance and preservation of what we have that's still functional has got to be the priority over the next year,
Mhm.
at the very least. Okay, I-
Um,
go
I
ahead.
was going to say, Mayor, one item that I know that you've discussed is police service. And we've discussed that in the context of sales tax. Is there anything else that you'd like to share at this time on just some of the research you've done?
Here's the problem we're gonna face. Is that the sales tax that just renewed that or the sales tax that just came into effect for water. The sales tax that sunsets in the latter part of this year was specifically allocated between 3 things, and that was public safety, property tax reduction, and parks and recreation. Okay, probably not much of that went to any of those places when it came right down to it. That sales tax would have covered our obligation for this year on the contract with the sheriff's office. Okay. But that's outside the tax base. Okay, it's money coming in outside, reducing the mill levy that we would have spent. We're going to look at somewhere, depending on how we would structure a public safety organization, we're going to look at somewhere in the area between $225,000 and $250,000, which would be the equivalent of a 4-officer funded contract with the sheriff's office like we had before. That's what the budget was. Now, that's looking at basically 24/7 coverage. What we need to be able to decide is, do we want to have 24/7 coverage? What are the advantages and disadvantages? Do we want to look at some type of cooperative law enforcement with another city where it cuts our costs substantially? Equipment wise, we can get grant funding to purchase the initial equipment that's available through the federal government on OJP grant, Office of Justice projects, especially for communities this size. But we're going to be looking at either renewing a sales tax and taking a good chunk of that and probably setting it at 2% or 2%, and putting a good chunk of that towards law enforcement, probably 60%, or having to live with what we've got, which is not what I hear the public particularly interested in. The other thing we got to consider is, do we want to try to, at some point, recruit businesses into the downtown section? Because I've talked to a couple of folks said, why do we want to open a store over there and have it broken into that, time after time and blah, blah, blah. And that's a concern, but it's not the backbreaker. But the decision we're gonna have to make when the budget numbers come together is, what can we afford to do? What's the most economical way to handle the problem? And do we look at some kind of cooperative law enforcement where we cover, uh, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week on site and depend on cooperative officer or whatever the other 8 hours of the day. That cuts a substantial amount. That cuts about 50,000 out of there. So
Who would we have a cooperative with, Benton? El
probably
Dorado?
probably Benton as
Okay.
far as
And do they still have their own police?
Yeah.
Okay.
probably Benton is an option. That's been kicked around a number of times over the years. Uh, have to be a pretty strong contractual agreement of how it's going to be handled.
And they're in
But we-
agreement with the potential of that? or have
Depending
you
on the
talked to them?
contract, yeah, the potential is there. It's all in whether or not we think that's advantageous. Um, You know, the downside is if we cover days and evenings here, then we still have the problem at 2 o'clock in the morning and somebody's breaking into a car on 8th Street.
Correct. I mean, and this is just, strictly off of the Facebook pages and all that, but I'm not saying I've not ever seen people claiming that their vehicles are broken into,
Sure.
because it has happened. I feel here lately it's been more about people speeding through town, running stop signs, stuff like that, which I'm not saying isn't important, but it's just $250,000. That's a lot of
Sure it is.
that's a lot of money that for 24-hour coverage. It's,
Those are some numbers to be thinking
Yeah.
on for
absolutely.
budget time, because that's a pretty close number to what we'll wind up spending. And that's what we were budgeting 4 years ago when we still had the 4-person law enforcement contract with the county was 225,000. But
What if-
wages have gone up.
have you looked at what it would be if we did like where we bought, the vehicle, stuff like that, and then we went out and contracted Butler County Sheriff's officers or even El Dorado police officers that were off duty that day that want to make some extra money?
Part of what we're looking at in doing what we're talking about now,
Yeah,
$250,000, is using a number of part-time officers. Yeah, I've talked to El Dorado, I've talked to different agencies about, what's their policy on allowing officers to work part-time in other towns and that kind of thing. If you covered 2 shifts a day, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, then you'd be using part-time officers on the weekends the whole weekend. You could probably you may not need an officer Saturday and Sunday during the day. You may need them more evening and nighttime. You'd have to figure that out. But that's where we're at this point in time.
Mayor and council, we had a community engagement event last week related to public safety, including storm shelters and police. We didn't have huge turnout, but we got a little bit of feedback via some surveys, some comment forms, and it was valuable. I think I'd like to see if we can kind of run that same event, same materials a couple more times with a little bit more announcement time. And I think the feedback we get also will help us to better understand the community need and the community expectations for, which may help us kind of tailor what's the appropriate price point, and kind of what is the scale of coverage the community is willing to pay for.
And probably an online survey wouldn't
Mhm.
be out of the question there either.
Yes,
Okay.
and so some continued engagement can happen. And then obviously we're working on a sales tax ballot question for August, for the early August election.
okay.
And so we will have, dare I say, a number of referendums between now and when we would actually set something in motion. And so there are a lot of places where formally or informally, we will get feedback on kind of where is the public's price point.
Yeah. I'm all for us, if it makes sense financially, I wouldn't mind having our own Towanda Police Department. I think
Well,
it'd be great, but
you know,
this
the thing with-
250,000 is a lot when we have other problems.
Yep. And, you know, we don't take into consideration the potential of revenue generation by law enforcement. One of the things that would be that become their responsibility is the animal control problem. So there's some advantages and some disadvantages, but I think it's something that we probably need to have a very open discussion on fairly soon.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else anybody has on discussion of budget control priorities? Okay. Item number 2 on the agenda, building located at 309 Main Street. Lisa, did you have some comments on this, or Sarah, you have a PowerPoint on this one,
I
Sarah?
do, and Mayor,
Okay.
I'm glad to give us a quick kickoff here. So we have discussed this several times in recent months. We've got a timeline here that shows, again, 309 Main has been a concern for the city since late 2024. In November of 2024, there was a hearing date fixed to look at repair or demolition. And so we're kind of back full circle to where we were a year and a half ago. As part of that repair and demolition, on February 1st, the building front was struck by machinery, causing structural damage and leading to the shoring that is currently on the sidewalk at the building. There were various conversations in that time, and drawings were reviewed by engineers. Those drawings were reviewed or created and reviewed in the late summer, early fall of last year. And then from that time on through about February, the monthly updates to council were that we were waiting on trusses that had been ordered and the project was pending. In February, staff were updated that the building owner and contractor would like to look at some grant opportunities to try to save the building through some external funding sources. And staff have met with the contractor as well as with the Southeast or South Central Kansas Economic Development District to discuss a CDBG Community Development Block Grant option. In March, the council postponed signing and passing a demolition resolution based on the promise that the repairs would be completed in the month of March. There were some back and forths between engineers to make sure that everything was fully understood and approved by engineers before construction began. That approval was given March 31st. April 8th, at our regular meeting, the council stated that they wanted to see work well underway by this past Monday, April 20th. Work has not been underway. Any sort of new permits have not yet been pulled. Roberto, contractor, stopped by on Friday and spoke with staff about the status of supplies that have been ordered. He said that he has worked to try to expedite supplies for this project. They are due on the 24th. However, at this time, staff need to report to council that there has been no substantial action that has been noted at the building. Financially, we are between a rock and a hard place, quite frankly. Major repair of the building would be expensive. Again, the building owner has looked at grant fund opportunities, including community development block grant funding. The city would have to serve as a sub-grantee. These kinds of grants are not issued to individuals or private owners. There is a lot of compliance and reporting that goes within it. And I think we would need to hear from Mr. Perry that he has a business plan, that he's ready for all compliance aspects of that grant. We would need to see that he has the funds on hand for his match share, and we have not yet seen that. Similarly, proceeding with the dilapidation process also could be costly. The city would need to front the cost of the demo, looking at any obligations for stabilizing the adjacent building. Engineering review, I'm sure, would be essential, and it would be a separate contract for that level of review. And so ultimately it is going to be costly no matter where we go. But with that, at this point in time, staff do encourage council to approve the proposed demolition resolution and then to go ahead and direct staff to obtain estimates for the cost. Simply because we have not seen action We know that staff assistance with a grant is going to be time consuming and labor intensive. And we are just not seeing the action and the engagement that builds the trust to drive this forward. And Lisa and I both can stand for themselves.
Ed?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, showing here, 9/24/25, the engineer for owner, construction plans were approved by JEO. So what construction plans changed from September of 25 to
Alright.
The approved,
March of 26?
the approved plans were for the reconstruction of the building that resulted in the wall getting knocked down. The original plans were for reconstruction of the existing building on that date. During the reconstruction and renovation of the building, is when the wall got knocked down.
No, the wall was knocked down,
February 25.
yeah, February 25, but this says 9/24/25, JEO approved
Oh,
plans.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm
that was
sorry.
a
Yeah.
Then what
second set
changed?
of review. And I think when we met in March, there was some question about whether there had been final review. There was kind of between that March 8th meeting and the March 31st date, some
Right.
back and forth just to make sure everybody on both engineering teams fully understood the project and had signed off
Correct me,
officially.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the plan that was approved, the earlier plan that was approved, was to go back and rebuild the building as was originally planned. Trusses were ordered and those kinds of things, okay? That's what was signed off on by JEO. What was then looked at, because trusses, for some reason or another, weren't available, shipping was delayed, various things. So a plan was developed to stabilize the building and get rid of, so you got two separate approvals. You had JEO signing off on, yeah, this will work, you can go back in and start back on your renovation project, put up new trusses, do this, that, and the other thing.
Mhm.
When that didn't happen, then second approval by JEO was for a plan to shore up the north face wall of that building, and get rid of the two befores out in front.
Okay.
So it's two separate, it's kind of confusing, but it's two
Hmm.
separate, in my understanding, it's two separate
Mhm.
plans that were approved. One was for the total thing, the other was just to shore up the wall.
Okay.
One other wrinkle that actually emerged in conversation Friday, in talking with Roberto, he mentioned that the proposed improvements, the proposed reshoring are an external project, which was not what either staff or my understanding council had understood, that it was going to be external. I did reach back out to engineers on both teams, and both have reassured me, no, an external improvement was not approved. It would need to be an internal only. And so there has been a lot of shift in terms of what are the plans. It has been very difficult to get a clear sense of exactly where we are with what is planned and what is being carried out.
I just, like I've said, seems like every time we meet on this, it's either something new or something hasn't changed when we're told, hey, we're gonna get this done, and nothing happens. I understand what Rob said last meeting about how engineers can take a while to get back to each other on this. Okay, great. That was 23 days ago. We've seen no headway. I feel like it's just kind of us being fed the line, and every time we're biting at it, and it's just being pushed on. Just,
Well, and I think that's part of the reason we set a date.
but we've moved that date numerous times now too.
Well, yeah, but we,
So
Well, that's the reason why it's on the agenda tonight.
correct.
exactly.
So my question, and I hate to even bring this up, but my concern is that if the financial responsibility of the city, if we move forward with demolition, or, condemning it, but then can we not go back if it ends up that the council votes to demolish or condemn the building and we end up putting the cost? Can we not seek recoupment of that money to the owner?
Mhm.
If I may, I don't know the order of operations, but may I add my 2 cents? Or do you want to wait until?
Let's
Okay.
let the council finish.
Yeah.
Oh, also finished, okay.
Yes,
I mean,
and
I
then
mean,
at that point, the mayor would
Okay.
acknowledge any speakers.
yeah, I mean,
The answer to your question is yes.
Okay, because that was where my concern was last
Hold on.
week when we discussed. Yeah.
The answer to your question is yes. Can it be assessed back? Yes. What crystal ball do you have to prognosticate whether you're gonna get that back?
Sarah, have we gone out for any kind of a ballpark estimate on what the engineering study would be to
We have
make
not yet.
sure that the wall, okay, the Gambino's wall is safe? Okay.
so we don't have any, so even if we voted today to move forward with the demolition, we don't even have a timeline on when that would happen. How long it would take to get JEO to approve the plans and make sure that Gambino's wall is still good, like, it could be
Right.
month, that's what you guys are saying, I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this would really be the first act to kick off the process. After that, we would be seeking out what the costs, the bids and estimates would be. There is a chance that if action were taken by the building owner or the contractor, even as this is progressing, that doesn't mean that we will necessarily end with demolishing the building. They could still take action. This just forces action to move forward as opposed to
Versus
the delay
agreed
we've
on
been
the,
in.
what is it, the 8th of July, I believe, to make a final determination. The longer we string it out, the longer out the hearing is going to be.
If you approve the resolution, my suggestion would be, first step would be JEO's demo plan. Being prepared, getting you an estimate, you paying for it, they preparing it, then you're using that plan to get solicit bids to execute the demo plan. And then you select the winner, and then they execute the plan. And that's September.
Okay.
Council's
And
opinion.
I'm speculating
Yeah,
wildly.
yeah, no, I get that.
While we're waiting on
Rob said
that,
September.
Gabino's place is still
I'm gonna hold you to it.
left out in the open. He came here with pictures of stuff that needs to be repaired right now. When are these repairs gonna be done to his place so he can at least have a halfway safe place? Why should we have to wait till September for the other part that's torn apart? Why can't they go in there and do fixing for Gabino's place? So at least we got something halfway started, our footstep in the
Mhm.
right direction.
As a city, we have to follow the legal process.
Yeah.
We don't have the authority to jump
There's a
in.
number of questions,
Right.
once a plan is voted on and set in motion, that need to be answered. With regards to the Gambino's building, one of them's gonna be that west wall on the exterior of it. It's to be dealt with. So,
And quickly.
So
I'm not sure I
to
understand.
recap, I think why, if the city were to proceed with any sort of a demolition, why would we not be able to jump in and immediately do work to protect the Gambino's building?
Because you need the demo plans to
Okay.
do that.
Okay.
There's been no demo plan.
Yeah.
There's been a shoring up plan, and there's been a rebuild plan.
but no doubt.
Both have been approved by JEO, but not drafted by JEO. If the city were to execute and approve this resolution, we are then in the driver's seat for the demo plan because the rebuild plan, the shoring up plan have not occurred.
Yes.
And so what we can do is to condemn basically, and
Yeah.
to make safe is by removing of what's left, at the same time protecting the neighbor. That requires a plan. You don't just drive through and knock down what's left, because then if you do damage what's the sharing of the wall, then we're in a worse spot obviously than we ever would have wanted to be.
Yeah.
So getting the demo plan is next step, and then getting the demo plan requires soliciting bids for executing the plan and knocking it down. and following the steps in the plan to knock it down to make sure nothing else comes down.
Which is what we're looking at right now.
Mhm. And so the proposed resolution tonight kicks all that in motion and allows us to at least put it on a timeline to where things will proceed. Government moves slowly, and it's about the legal process.
It's to potentially make you even more frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
It's very possible that you could proceed with the resolution. You could solicit JEO to start with the demo plan. They could finish it. You could put it out for bid. And before you even order at any time before, I'm just saying hypothetically September, they obtain a permit for their shoring up and do it. But then you're X number of dollars in for the JEO plans, you're X number of dollars in for maybe that's it.
Yeah, and then also.
And so then
we
you
could be
get,
sitting
you
here-
have a different decision to make at that particular point in time, and one that I'm not prepared to give you advice on today.
But we'll be sitting here next year at the same time on the same discussion if we don't make a plan with JEO.
Potentially, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm reading where you guys are going with this. I doubt we're going to be here 2027 in the exact same position that we are.
I hope not.
Does that answer your question?
Yes,
I'm not sure I
yes.
understood it, but okay.
You had a comment?
My name is Johanna. I am the commercial real estate agent who represents Perry Jones and his properties. I was originally obtained to represent the east properties, and in doing so, I've had quite a bit of interest in a larger space. Because of his two properties that I represent, there's a wall that cannot be torn down. For example, Derby Dance Company, there's been collectively groups that are interested in larger square footage, which would be a great opportunity in this said property. I think collectively as a community, the goal is to bring in businesses, to bring in exposure to help the neighboring businesses and to work together as a community for the city of Towanda. So ideally, if we can find a resolution to help this property bring to light Main Street, that's the goal. I was just brought on in the last year, so unfortunately I was not aware that this was ongoing. And although I wasn't originally obtained for that property, I have recently been introduced to Roberto and explained the details where we've explored the grant opportunities. So albeit it sounds like this has been a long conversation, I appreciate your guys' attention to the property. And it sounds like there's still a little bit more of time, although we're taking time bombs. So I understand the trussels, that there's been a delay with, I'm not sure all the details of that, and there's a lot of moving parts in this. But that's kind of where I'm at, and I just wanted to explain that there has been quite a bit of exposure, whether it is from the neighboring towns for this Main Street and these properties, but these are the obstacles that we're facing. So, yeah, that's all.
So I have a picture of the van. These vans originally were built back on the day. They called, it used to be a furnace. So the middle part will exhaust the fumes outside. Between the top walls, in between this wall, there is a gap of 4 inches. So the air can breathe out and go in through this round thing around this. So the fumes comes out from here and the fresh air comes through here. That was back on the days. Now with the new air conditioning systems, even with those, and the buildings are really tall, so they need this to circulate the air on top. So I offer Nick to fix it without capping it, because you need that breathing space. Now, yeah, it was gonna be a man of money. He didn't like it. At the end of the day, it's his building, it's his wall, and as a business owner like me, I take care of my business. I can share it with anyone, but it's my responsibility. Now, the easiest solution was to just put a grill, so the birds don't nest in it and the leaves don't go in there. Now, if from the other side it was capped, then that's gonna defeat the purpose of this vent. Watch out, are you okay? And so if he capped it on his side, then it's gonna defeat the purpose. The easiest way also to fix it is to put a grill on his side inside of the building, So let the air to breathe in. So that was one issue. The corner that fell off from the crash on the equipment, it has been corrected. I sent pictures to Nick and he knows that it's fixed. So we don't have any more issue with him right now. If they share the wall, you guys demolish the building, you're gonna have a vacant lot that the taxes are gonna go down, so you won't collect any more taxes because the demolition, the assessment is gonna be nothing. And like she said, I had the pleasure to meet her before, Sarah. So you're gonna collect that money through taxes, property taxes. It's gonna take like 15 years to pay for the demolition cost, I'm telling you. And so you let the building to go back to original shape and have a specialized realtor to promote it. Another business can come in and you can assess sales taxes and the property taxes. You can probably do an levy and increase it because it's a new building. It's going to have a new roof. The issue with the trusses, the first contractors, I never speak bad about anyone, but the first contractors, they planned for the roof to be on the original shape. But because of the accident that happened, the second evaluation, my engineer and GEO and I decided that to make the slope going back to the alley.
Okay.
So it will run the water not to the neighbor, not to Gambinos, but here. And then we can do a channel, a drain channel to come and make it work to come out this way. Not a big deal. So you get opportunity to for the grant to work as well. It's gonna take time, but believe me, these are not enchiladas. When GEO approved my order for the material, I contacted 3 companies. It took a week and a half to get one bid affordable.
Mhm.
It was an amount of money, and I had to pay another $1,500 to expedite it in 2 weeks. So they're going to be delivered on the 24th. If not, it was going to be the first week of May. So it's not on our hands. It's not an easy process. It's really complex. And another thing, if you check the cost, I don't know what you guys do for a living, but the increase of cost in materials because of the fuel, diesel, gasoline, it went from 8% to 12%. So if I give an estimate today, in 3 days, it's worthless. It's not the same thing. So I'm trying to keep everything at the same commitment that I have. Now, through the grant, there might be a chance that I'm not going to be the contractor to do that because I'm too involved in the property. So even with that lack of opportunity to make money, I'm here in front of you guys trying to solve the issue. All right. And I'm a real estate broker like Joanna. Business is good for a town. I own a property in Ural, and they are really friendly, and that's what I went down there to do business. I bought a commercial property, and they are giving all the facilities. It's a rundown property, but it qualifies for a similar grant that Mr. Jones is applying for. Thank you, guys. And Lisa, thank you.
When was the original time that they said they were ordering the trusses? Was that like,
About this time
Oh,
last year.
yes. It was another thing. When we changed the plan to do the slope to the back, they have to stop the manufacturing of those trusses and reissue another ones. But we were waiting for the approval. We got approval, but the cost went tremendously. And already Mr. Jones is probably 30,000 under the water because of the previous people involved.
And the
Weren't those
trusses are only relevant to the rebuild part of the plans. The trusses aren't relevant to the shoring up part of the option, right?
No, for this one, no. For the one that you allow me to
I mean,
do.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
in my head, the trusses were for September 2025.
Yeah.
Plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Trusses are not relevant to shoring up piers plan that was,
My
that's what I'm
question,
saying. I just think it's kind of comical. Here we are, almost May, and it's taken 8 months to get trusses.
where are the trusses?
They are in production now, but it's gonna take until we start. Now that the columns are not gonna be on the exterior, we came back to the original plan, and they're gonna be inside, and that's the beginning of the project, anyways.
Where are they?
Probably 45% completion.
So they were ordered a year ago,
No. We didn't order them because
but we
not me, but
heard from meeting after meeting that
They
trusses
changed.
were delayed in shipping.
the trusses changed when the plans changed.
yeah, because the plan changed, and then the cost also went up, and that's when we decided to take a break and find other financial resources to do it.
I brought up what I brought up for this purpose. Trusses are relevant to the rebuild,
Right.
which the rebuild plan is not gonna happen without the grant. With the grant's not gonna happen without the process. In my head, and you guys obviously are grown people, trusses aren't relevant for 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, the relevance to me was I'd ask a number of times for, call it what it was, proof of that they've been ordered and never got it.
Updates and.
When the plans changed, yes, the trusses had to change. I how they're even put into production without, if there's been a down payment made, then so be it. But the completion of the project's not gonna occur without the grant is what we've been led to believe. So therefore, the trusses aren't going anywhere, whether they're made or not, for some time.
Yeah,
Did I understand that the shoring up of the building is gonna happen externally now and not internally?
No, it's gonna happen internally now. As the original plan called.
That's what it was.
And those will be in Friday.
no, originally it was
Oh,
external.
let's back up.
No, it was internal.
Sarah didn't. You're saying that
Oh,
your plan now is to shore the building up from the inside.
That was the original plan, to start working on setting up the roof. But because we were offering a opportunity to delay the demolition process, my plan was to do it outside. But then I was informed from Lisa and Sarah that because the city, the sidewalk is city property, I'm not allowed to disturb that part. So we're gonna do it on the original plan.
And engineers from both Prairie Psalm and JEO confirmed to me yesterday that the plans that have been approved are internal,
Mhm.
not
I
external.
was under the impression it was always gonna be external, but maybe I'm wrong.
It sounds like what changed was the property, the
Mhm.
sidewalk.
What was
Am I
the,
right?
Where did,
With this all the time.
where in this
what was the,
dialogue did the story that they were gonna be external come up?
The last time that I was here,
So Roberto told Lisa and I on Friday that it was an external plan.
Okay.
And Lisa and I both said,
So-
that is not what we have understood. That is not what we
Now
told
you
council.
changed your plan again.
no, the last time that I was here, because it was brought to my attention that the wooden braces was an eyesore to the people. We were planning on doing a different type of system support for those columns, which is not a whole wall, it's just columns. So with that intention, I contact Brad, and I don't know if it was Robert or Drew or Kid, that mentioned that it needed to be approved by JEO. So that's what we did. We followed up with them. He did. We had the same conversation. Then my engineer Ryan got in contact with him. So they were working, and there was approval for me to use it. But then I was told that I couldn't do it on the outside because it was city property. So we come back just to the original plan.
Okay.
Without the roof, just to support the columns and the wall that it got detached from the other.
So that was on the 31st.
Mhm.
Okay.
That
So
was,
city staff were informed on Friday, the 17th of April, that it was going to be an external project. And then I reviewed with both sets of engineers yesterday, so April 21st. And both sets of engineers confirmed that what was approved was an internal project. So this
I
is in
didn't
the
check
past
it.
week that we've had
Yeah.
back and forth.
Yeah, I
So-
didn't change it.
let me back up again.
Mhm.
You were under the impression until last Friday it was gonna be an external plan.
Right, and until they
So-
told me that.
Let me finish.
So,
So you had ordered equipment, parts, materials for an external plan.
correct.
What's the difference between the materials needed for an external plan and internal plan?
It's the same member, same elements. It was just to be placed on the exterior, but on Friday I found out that I cannot do it, so it's gonna be just on the back, interior.
No difference.
There's no difference. The members are gonna be the same. Everything, what else that was approved by JEO, the plan was to use it outside. I couldn't do it, so I'm just gonna do it inside, how it was planned in the beginning. And approved already by JEO.
So why has it not been started on now? If you found out Friday and here it is Wednesday?
Because when I read the material, it took 15 days and then I had to pay $1,500 more to get it expedited in 2 weeks.
Well,
You just said you already had
the
this
next
stuff.
problem I have
I just
is,
explained.
the next problem I have is the 8th of April, we pretty much, what I refer to as drew a line in the sand, okay? We don't hear anything until the Friday before the line is ready to be chopped up.
Right.
Why?
Last meeting I wasn't here, so I know there was a lot of conversation. I wasn't here. So Mr. Jones informed me, and I started working on getting the material. And I called Brad. He said yes, and he approved for me to do the interior and start working on it. On it was March 23rd, I believe. So that week I wasn't available. The following week I started looking for bids for because this is not the only project that I handle. I'm busy and I have a schedule flow too. If I put a project to start this date and because of your guys' approval or the engineers, I cannot get it started, it goes back to the line because I already have other clients waiting for me to get it started. I respect their time. I respect your time. I'm asking you to respect my time as a contractor as well.
And I'm not sure how much you respect our time, but because this has drug on and on. And like I said, you knew or should have known 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, that you couldn't get the parts in before such and such a date. Yet you wait until the Friday before the deadline with a weekend in between to come talk to Lisa and Sarah.
Yes, I was not available that week.
Do you have a phone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to be heard? Nick?
I mean, my position's pretty much the same.
Okay,
We need
all
to
right.
Make some progress.
Council's decision.
Question.
Yes, Lane, I'm
fairly
sorry.
ignorant to this. I've only come in, I think probably pretty late to the game on this, but just from what I've heard, forgive me if this is a really stupid question. Is there not anything the city can do, like code enforcement wise, to the owner of that building? Like write him a ticket every month, write him a ticket every week, write him a ticket every day till he does what he needs to do. I mean, to light a fire under, is that even a thing that you could do?
Well, my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, that that building with the temporary stabilization did not create any type of hazard.
That's what we asked
To
them
the
to
city.
do. So they basically, it's stabilized because we asked them to stabilize.
Right.
That's, we
But
can't.
is there a code violation involved? That's the question that Lane asked. Is there a code violation?
Please help me. Is that a code violation?
Is there any code violation involved with that building being?
I don't believe so, no.
I mean, if they did what we asked them to do, we can't turn around a year later and be like, now we're gonna start finding you for doing what we asked you to do. I would feel that's how it would be.
You have, you guys care if I respond?
No, please do.
What I think I hear you say, it's kind of multi-pronged. One is, hey, how can we motivate to take mitigating steps of motivation prior to what's being discussed here? And two, how do you do that? You've got the miscellaneous dilapidated structure code, basically, that you could fall under. But ultimately, at the end of that road is
We'll be at the same place
What
we're
we're
at now.
doing right now.
what we're doing right now.
Yeah, that, I was just curious if there was.
As far as
anything
motivation goes,
Had at your disposal.
if you think $50 fine a day or $100 fine a month is motivation when it's been in in this condition that's been in, I would respectfully disagree with how successful that motivation would be.
Mhm.
Staff's recommendation.
Um, I recommend, let's see here.
I'm sorry, let me get that too on the screen. That's gonna be your cleanest version.
Yes.
I recommend that we approve the proposed demolition resolution and direct staff to obtain estimates for associated costs.
Second.
All in favor? 4-0. Didn't bring my blue pen.
And so again, to recap, this moves forward with the demolition resolution and sets in motion that process. That does not mean that they cannot continue to
Yeah, correct.
do the repairs that have been proposed. That would be an ideal situation.
I hope they do.
But this does begin to put teeth to action.
We can't go on. All right, anything else on that? You have some comments you'd like to make about employee compensation structure?
Yes.
Madam City Manager?
Okay. So Towanda has a mayor, council, administrator form of government, and that's important because my authority is limited and there are decisions that need to be made by the mayor and council. So salaries for city employees should be fixed by annual resolution by the council. And as far as I can tell, the most recent resolution of that nature was in December of 2023. So council has not seen a salary resolution since that time. Compensation adjustments have been made administratively since that time. And so there's a process for that through the budget in terms of preparing cost of living and things. But in terms of significant adjustments, those are things that should come to council. Pay increase opportunities have also been promised to employees. We have a number of new public works employees who have been hired in the past year, and promises have been made, and those procedures and justifications are not currently in our employee handbook. And so there should be information in handbook or in policy guiding any sort of adjustments that have been approved. And so at this point, we're standing in a place where things that have been promised have not been formally brought to council and approved. So the previous administrator developed a certification pay system because within especially the public works and utilities field, those certifications help to protect the city, they help to build knowledge, they are a chance for employees to learn and grow in their craft. The promise that was made is that public works and utility employees would receive $1 per hour per certification earned. And really this is looking at 5 major certifications. We're talking about a CDL, commercial driver's license, which allows them to drive some of the equipment we have, as well as water operator 1 and 2, and wastewater operator 1 and 2. I learned in March we had 2 employees walking through the CDL process, and I'd heard a lot of stories about how difficult it was and how hard the test was. And they both completed it, and that was a huge celebration. And the next day I learned that there had been a promise made that I did not have authority to keep as far as cert pay. And so right now the city doesn't have an adopted policy that allows me to honor that promise. So what I have found is that in recent years, other pay increases have been granted on a case-by-case basis. And the challenge with that is it actually moves us away from an equitable place where employees can progress according to, say, a set cost of living or merit-based, or they know that this certification will align with this increase. And it becomes more of a, when somebody feels like they've been overlooked for too long, they come and ask. So an equitable salary schedule would consider the employee's role. Different roles have different values based on the type of work, the type of training and knowledge. And so you'd look at role, knowledge and training, years of service, performance, and factors like that to keep compensation equitable so that people can progress within their careers with the city. And so it's true that the city needs qualified employees, especially when we've got somebody who is willing to invest in time and training. It's nice to be able to incentivize that and to reward them to not only build that professional workforce, but then not have them turn around and leave us. Maintaining that professional workforce is key, and that's part of the handbook adjustments that we changed in our last meeting. And so the other side of that, though, the administrative side, is that any sort of increases need to be budgeted for. And we need to be implementing according to the established process and not just kind of on a, somebody comes and asks. So the financial impact, if we honor the promise that was made, the $1 per hour for the CDL certification for 2 employees, and if we honor it, I'd like to backdate to the time that their licenses were earned. We're looking at about $3,500 for the 2 employees to honor that promise. And that can be accounted for in the 2026 budget. However, when I calculated if we honored that for 4 employees times 5 certifications, we're looking at more than $40,000. That probably can't be budgeted for. And we're not going to solve that one tonight. But there's a difference between how do we honor what's already been promised and earned and what do we do going forward. So I would like to recommend tonight that we honor that $1 per hour increase for the first major certification. And so that would be of the 5 that I listed, earned by each of our current public works employees. Beyond that, I'd like to, in the future, do some additional research, not just within public works, but across our whole staff, to really redevelop an equitable pay structure that looks at what are the incentives that we offer and balancing those against a budget in which we are paying people with taxpayer resources. And we need to be intentional about those decisions. I also want to create a culture where we've got comparable opportunities for all staff. We were chatting as staff today. We have a firefighter who works part-time for us, but firefighters get certificates in many, many different things. You know, our public works has like major and minor certifications, whereas like a city clerk has one certification that takes 4 years to earn. And so there's a need to kind of balance out how those look so that we don't quickly race one type of employee up a chain that another employee can't obtain and that we can't sustain financially. And so bigger conversation here. This is just the first part. But we really want to create a workplace where employees can advance as they're bringing increased value to the city of Towanda, while also balancing that with budget and with, you know, good practices. So tonight, no action is recommended. It's really just an update for feedback and consideration. But what I'd like to do is hear from council on, does council generally have a desire to honor that promise? In which case I would bring a recommendation back to our May 13th meeting. And I'm also glad to answer any questions about just kind of the comprehensive pay structure and some of the misalignments that we're finding.
And as far as I'm concerned, yes, bring it up at the next meeting for dollar increase. I'm all for it. They've been, they were told that they would get it. And there's no reason why we can't give it to them.
But also moving forward, you know, like you said, certain certificates, we don't, you know, want someone to be like, hey, I can go get 15 certificates. And then, you know, now it's like, hey, we got to cap it at some point.
I have seen the probably best comparable policy in the area. I think offered 42 cents an hour for the first cert and 21 cents per hour for additional. So we are definitely, yes, we are definitely competitive in that. But again, probably the $5 an hour advancement opportunity is not sustainable.
I was gonna say, and then where do you cap the amount of certifications that one can earn?
Yes, and that's probably part of a bigger design.
Which I can go get all the certifications they want, make them a better employee, better person. But at some point, the city's got to say, hey, we're only going to pay you for X amount. Or, you know, we do the dollar like we had told them before, like they had been promised before, and then say, all right, moving forward, it's, you know, 50 cents per, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, no, she was saying other places are 21. So yeah, if we want to stay competitive, maybe we make it a little bit more, but still not breaking the bank. You know, we want, from what I've heard, the guys that we have here,
so much.
great.
Absolutely.
Yes, we are.
They're great here. We want to keep them.
Yes.
And us being a small town, I know that we've had it in the past where people come here, get their cert, stuff like that, and then, oh, hey, I'll go to a bigger town and make more money. We want to keep these guys.
That's why the sheriff can't keep people.
Yeah. So
It's a training ground.
You know, if everyone's happy with these guys, which it seems like everybody is, we need to do what we can to keep them. And I think first step is honoring what they were told to begin with.
I have a question. Does the city, I have a couple of questions. Does the city pay for the certification process?
So the CDL certification actually was offered through the city of El Dorado, and it's my understanding there was no cost for the class. There was cost to the city of Towanda in terms of time that they were on the clock, but not here.
Okay, so
So as
they're
far as
not out
cost,
of
it was,
pocket.
right,
they're not out of pocket for gaining that certification.
for sure.
And I'm thinking back, probably 5 years ago, Kearney was still here when we paid for a tutor to get a couple of guys through the water.
That practice, I can't tell you, as being the senior member at this U-shaped round table, that practice, I don't know that it was $1 per cert, but that practice of the increase per cert's been 20 years in the making,
Yeah.
at least.
Oh, yeah. No, I
Just so that you're aware.
Like they've been
I don't remember the number figure,
Yeah.
but it's long been an unofficial practice of,
Hey, we're gonna do it.
hey, when our field guys get cert XYZ, we're bumping their pay.
And they haven't been doing it, or they have been.
No,
They have.
They
been,
have
but not
been.
they have been. I don't think that we as a city have been delinquent in doing it. I think that she's looking for it to make it more formal and official.
memorializing it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Making it official by council and not just something that's
Correct.
Because you're making
word of
a
mouth.
change to technically the employee handbook. You have to have our approval for that.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
Okay.
God, you say that, and I could be completely wrong,
What's that?
and likely am. And I think even the administrative portion, what you're phrasing as an administrative increase, which to me is from Andy, I think even sometimes I feel like he did it too, is that he always got your guys' approval. Maybe not you guys, but the people in your chairs
Yeah.
approval before that pay bump occurred. It was just never paper. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
I don't know. I
exactly.
wasn't here. So.
I think it needs, I think Sarah's on the right track. It needs to be, there needs to be some type of procedure. Paul, can you back up
Oh, I
a
agree.
slide or two?
I've been here forever.
Sure.
One
And
more.
procedurally, things can be approved in the budget and then conducted administratively. The budget is our master policy doc.
See, my thinking was at some point, a couple of 3 years ago, we were going to do a salary range plan. Like such and such was X dollars to X dollars. And then it was up to the administrator where the person fell in that. I think we made it up to the administrator where people fell in it. I just don't think we ever got a really formal plan, which I think is something.
And that's really something that should come to council annually is the wage structure.
You had one in there about performance, Sarah.
Back here.
There we go. When we're talking about performance, what's the policy on performance evaluations?
At the moment, I believe that performance evaluations are outlined in the handbook, but they have not been conducted in the past.
Okay.
I am working on a performance evaluation template. I would like to implement it by May or June, just so that we have a preliminary review before it's actually real. We need to decide kind of
Okay.
the technical details. Does it happen on the anniversary? Does it happen at the end of the year?
Right.
But a true performance review process would allow some goal setting conversations, some formal review and evaluation. It would force some hard conversations sometimes, and it would also provide justification for any sort of merit-based raise. I believe that aside from administratively approved increases, and I do have some documents reflecting things that were approved last year. But aside from that, most of what employees get has just been cost of living.
Okay. So what do you feel you need from council?
So I feel like council has indicated to proceed with bringing back something that would honor that $1 per hour for the first major certification. That's probably the only action I'll bring at the May 13th meeting. I think a lot of the rest of this is probably going to be throughout 2026 and looking at resetting wage scales going into 2027.
Okay.
So are we talking just 5 certifications
that are required for the maintenance people, or are there more than that?
So we don't actually have anything technically required at this time.
Okay,
We did the financial family of job descriptions last month.
yeah,
I am working on the public works family as well. And so that probably will actually clarify which certifications are expected at kind of which level of whether it's a maintenance worker 1, 2, or 3, or a foreman or a superintendent. Because along with progression, there should be required training.
Yeah.
I think within our organization, and I'm a little out of my element, but I think there's actually a 3 and 4 on some of those operators. And so if you had a really large city and you wanted to pay for that, you could. I think with us, really the 1 and 2 offer the greater value. We have to have a certified operator for our water system, our wastewater system.
mhm,
And right now we just have 1. And so getting a few others certed up, at least at the level 1, would be really helpful. We did not have CDL licenses before, and so we now have 2. So that allows us to legally drive our equipment. So these are helpful and important, but it would probably be like a mix and match strategy of who carries which ones as they're first getting started.
okay. Now, they're not running all over town, or they're staying here in town, right? They're not out on the road or going to another town?
Typically, no, but sometimes work does take them beyond.
I mean, I understand if they have to go pick up a piece of equipment, yeah, I understand
Yeah.
that, but I mean, I just don't want them, oh, let's go over to El Dorado and see
Right.
what's cooking over there or something like that.
So they are, like, just in terms of supply purchasing and things like that, they will take the city work trucks to
Yeah.
Sutherland's or other places in the area to
Yeah,
go
pick up
procure
parts,
things. But yes, as a general rule, no, their work is focused within city
We used to
limits.
pick up gravel, asphalt, that type of stuff quite a bit.
And you gotta have a big truck to do that. You can't do it in the back of a
Mhm.
pickup or a trailer.
That's why the CDL and driving the dump truck.
Yeah.
So,
So I will proceed with that recommendation and bring it back on May 13th.
Thank you.
anybody else have anything? Okay. Administrators asked for an executive session to have some discussions tonight.
I motion to enter an executive session. I move that the governing body recesses into executive session for
Let's maybe start with 20.
20 minutes. To discuss personal matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to the justification listed in KSA 75-4319B1, including in this session will be the mayor, council, city administrator, city attorney. The open meeting will resume in Towanda City Hall Council Room at 8:40.
I second that.
Second, by Drew, all in favor? 4-0. Bye.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for being here, Lane. Appreciate it.
Thanks for answering my question.
No problem. I'm just gonna follow you.
Thank you.
Can I help you with anything? You want me to throw that away?
No, you have it. You have a moment.